Hi everyone. If you're looking to stop scooping the golf ball and hit better, more penetrating golf shots, then I've got some great ideas and a drill for you. I'm Dr. Allison Kurt, LPGA Master, PGA Master Professional, and top 50 Golf Digest instructor in the United States. When we're looking at scooping, we'll see a player that takes the club head related to the grip, and the club head will start to move past the grip at impact. So when that happens, you're adding what's called dynamic loft. That's the playable loft of the club at the moment of impact. So if you have a 42-degree pitching wedge, for example, and you're flipping the pitching wedge, that could potentially cause the wedge to play at 47 degrees. It makes the ball go much higher, shorter, and certainly you start feeling like you're reducing that impact and that solid contact. So what ideally we'd want to have at impact is a little bit of what's called forward shaft lean. That's when the shaft of the golf club is tilted towards the target, the grip is a little bit in front of the head, and that's when you're starting to work the club a little bit more down into the ground, and the ball starts to come out lower, but a more penetrating ball flight. So you get the true loft, the actual loft of the club, if not a few degrees less. Wouldn't that be nice to have a 42-degree pitching wedge and maybe it enters into impact at 40 degrees or 39 degrees? Well, in order to do that, our body and our sequence needs to be quite a bit in order, and we need to have some tools or drills to be able to assist us in this. So one drill that I like to use, you need an impact bag, or you could use a big pillow, the side of a couch, but I like the impact bag because it's something that I can actually hit. It doesn't hurt the club, it doesn't hurt me, creates a nice good thud sound, so I feel powerful and strong. It's really a tool that's available where you can fill with towels or something soft and you can hit into it. I like this also for some at-home practice so that you're not constantly hitting balls and you're really changing your motor patterns. So let's look at how to stop the flip. As I set up to my impact bag, I'm going to take the club head and align it to the side of the bag. Now at this point you'll see that the grip is aligned with the club head. A flip at impact, or scooping it, would be when the club head is passing the grip. Now look at the angle of my wrist. It's actually bent back, almost like in a push-up position. This would be called an extended wrist. If I were to flex my wrist and have a little bit of bow, let's say, and I moved my wrist in this pattern, you then start to see the grip that's now in front of the club head. And this is going to deliver the club with more power, that better ball flight, that better solid feeling off the club head. Now, as I'm working on my motion, what I want to do is rotate my pelvis first. So you'll see that I'm starting to turn the pelvis. That's going to create some pull on my rib cage. As it pulls on my rib cage, my lead arm wants to start moving into impact. Now, if I imagine a straight line coming up from the side of my impact bag, my goal is to have the grip win the race through that zone rather than the club head. So imagine a line coming straight up, and as I rotate, starting with my pelvis, then pulling on my rib cage, you'll see that the grip moves through that zone before the club head. If I were to stop moving my body, perhaps not move my pelvis or my torso enough, then the club head would start to pass my hands, and then you'd see the hands didn't win the race. The club head won the race. So the key here is always have the grip feel like it's winning the race down into impact. Now, I'm going to take some half swings. Half is when the club is parallel to the ground, and I'm going to rotate into impact and strike the impact bag. You'll see that when I pause, the grip is ahead of the club head, and I have a little bit of flex in my lead wrist. This would indicate I have that forward shaft lean position, and I've avoided the scoop or the flip. Okay, so I want you to try this a couple of times where you're starting to feel the sequence. Again, the sequence begins with the pelvis first, that pulls on the rib cage. The rib cage pulls the arm down into impact. The hands are leading, and then the club head is going to strike the impact bag last. And again, having that imaginary finish line. Who wins the race? Does the club head win the race, or does the hands win the race? We want the hands to start moving through that finish line before the club head moves through. And as I'm continuing to practice these motions, I'm doing it gently so that I can get the motor pattern in my nervous system. You know, one of the key pieces about learning to change patterns in your body is to orient yourself to the muscles and the feeling that you get. Your nervous system is really going to lighten up with all these new sensations, and we have to pay attention to what's happening in our body. We don't need to start ripping balls right from the beginning. What we want to do is be able to move into these positions and learn the order of events before we start introducing a golf ball. And the impact bag is a great object for me to start moving into to where I can feel success. Now, if I get out of order and the club head starts to pass the hands, you can see that all of a sudden I have an incorrect angle from my lead wrist, and the club head now has a ton of added loft. So this ball is going to go much higher and certainly shorter. In fact, sometimes you can even blade it as the leading edge of the golf ball, leading edge of the club is striking the golf ball first. So in order for us to have that compressed motion, this is where we really want to include that forward shaft lean to avoid the scoop and avoid the flip. So again, slow motions, just very easy, moving into impact, pelvis starts, rib cage goes next, pulls on the left arm, and now I've got that forward shaft lean, that anti-scoop, anti-flip motion. Once you have a couple of those repetitions down, then you can start moving into more of your fuller swings. Perhaps you start hitting some shots lead arm parallel to the ground, so we'll call that like a 3/4 type swing. And once you have that motion and you can move into impact and you start to coordinate it, then build yourself up into the big swing. So now we're into our full swing motion. Pelvis starts first, rib cage pulls on the lead arm, club starts to move through, and now I've got enough rotation to support the grip being in front of that club head. That's going to be your anti-scooping move. What does the scoop or the flip look like? That's when a player's moving this way. You'll notice there's not as much rotation with the torso or the pelvis. When I start to add back in rotation with those segments, now all of a sudden the club is in a position where I have the grip that's leading the club head. So we want to continue moving pelvis, rib cage, lead arm. We want to continue moving, and then that grip starts to enter into that zone first. So you want to be able to practice into something where you can kind of get some feedback. And I love using the impact bag because as soon as I strike it, I can tell, is my shaft leaning back or is my shaft towards the target, indicating that forward shaft lean. And then I want you to make sure that you practice enough before you start striking balls. Try to get 20 to 30 reps each day, slowly enough so that you can understand what your body is doing before you start hitting some golf balls. Get the pattern in your nervous system, in your motor patterns, dialed in before you start ripping balls. Once you feel like you've got some confidence that you can go ahead and move your body and have that forward shaft lean, then it's time to introduce the golf ball as more of a test. Do I have this yet? So if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you like and subscribe and stay tuned for more great information.